My name is Aaron. I'm 29 years old, and I live on a farm in western Iowa with my wife, Rachel. Our farm sits right in the middle of about 50 acres of corn and soybeans. Our nearest neighbor is almost half a mile away, and after dark, the entire area becomes unbelievably quiet. If you've never lived out in the country, it's hard to explain just how dark it gets at night. There are no street lights, no passing cars, just the sound of the wind through the crops and the occasional noise from an animal. This all happened in late August of 2021. It was a Friday night, and my neighbor, George, and his wife had just left our house around 11 p.m. They live about 30 seconds down the dirt road, so visits like that were pretty normal for us. After they left, Rachel and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie when we suddenly heard something completely unexpected. A knock at the front door. And it wasn't a light tap either. It was 3 slow, heavy knocks. We looked at each other immediately. Nobody ever knocks on a farmhouse door this late at night. I muted the TV. The silence felt heavy. About 20 seconds passed. Then the knocking happened again. But this Jimmy, we also heard a voice coming through the door. Mister, please, we need help. My stomach immediately tightened into a knot. Rachel grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't open it." I walked closer to the door but made sure not to unlock it. Instead, I asked through the solid wood, "Who is it?" The voice responded quickly, almost too quickly. Me and my wife. "We're lost." That made absolutely no sense. You don't just get lost out here. There's literally one road 4 miles. So I pressed further. "Where's your car?" There was a slight pause. Then the voice said something that made Rachel and I exchange another worried glance. Down the road, it broke down. But the voice, it sounded strange. Not necessarily fake, but just slightly off. It was like someone was trying to sound more polite and gentle than they naturally would. It felt forced. I tried another question. "Can your wife say something?" Total silence. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. Finally, the man answered again. She's not right next to me." That's when all the red flags started going off in my head. So I decided to try something. I let out a loud laugh and said, "George, is that you?" George is exactly the type of guy who would pull a stupid prank like that just to get a rise out of us. The voice on the other side of the door hesitated. Then it replied, "Yeah." But this time, the voice was completely different. It was deeper, rougher. All the fake politeness was gone. My smile instantly vanished. I stepped back from the door and grabbed my phone. I called George. He answered after 3 rings. "Hey man, what's up?" I didn't waste any time. "Are you at my front door right now?" He sounded confused. "What? No. I'm home. Why?" My stomach just dropped. While I was still on the phone with him, someone knocked again. But this Jimmy, it was harder, more aggressive. Rachel was already whispering that she was calling the police. Then we heard footsteps on the wooden porch. It wasn't just one person. It was more than one set of footsteps. They started walking around the house, circling it. We heard them stopping near the windows. Suddenly, one of the windows rattled violently. Someone was actively trying to open it. I ran to the closet and grabbed my shotgun. I yelled through the house, as loud as I could, "I have a gun. Leave now." The voice from outside shouted back, "We just need to use a phone." But the tone was demanding now, not pleading. Rachel was already on the phone with 911, her voice shaking as she gave them our address. But out here, it can take a long time for officers to arrive. The nearest station is a good 20 minutes away. Then, just as the panic was reaching its peak, we heard a car approaching down the dirt road. Headlights swept across our front yard, lighting up the porch. It was Gilles. He must have realized something was seriously wrong. He ran up to the porch, also holding his own shotgun. But whoever had been outside was already gone. They had vanished back into the darkness. The police arrived about 15 minutes later and searched the entire property. They didn't find anyone. But the next morning, as the sun came up, we discovered something truly unsettling. Footprints. There were at least 3 different sets of them, all around the house. They were right outside every single window, meaning whoever those people were. They weren't just knocking on the door for help. They were watching us. They had been looking for a way in. We never found out who they were or what they wanted, but now, whenever it gets dark, that silence I used to find peaceful just feels threatening, and we don't answer the door for anyone after sundown. Thanks for listening. Remember to stay safe out there. My name is Brian, and this happened on my grandparents' farm in Nebraska in 2018. My grandparents own a fairly large cattle farm surrounded by cornfields and forest. That summer, they left town for a few days and asked me to stay there and watch the property. I was 22 at the time and didn't think much of it. The first 2 nights were completely normal, but the third night was different. Around midnight, I was watching TV when I heard something outside. At first, I assumed it was just a deer, but then all the cows started making noise at the same time. If you've ever been around cattle, you know that's not normal. Usually, one cow might make noise. Not the entire herd, but every cow in the barn started mooing loudly, almost like they were panicking. Then I heard something that made my skin crawl. A high-pitched scream from one of the cows. I had never heard a sound like that before. I grabbed my grandfather's hunting rifle and went outside. The barn lights were still on. Inside, the cows were extremely restless. I walked through the stalls, checking each one. That's when I noticed something strange. One cow was missing. The rope that tied it in place had been cut. I stepped outside again. That's when I heard something in the cornfield. Voices, multiple voices, talking quietly. My heart started racing. I fired 2 shots into the air, hoping to scare them away. Everything went silent. But then I heard footsteps inside the crops. Lots of them moving through the corn. I slowly walked toward the field. The crops were taller than me. As I stepped inside the rows of corn, I saw someone standing about 15 feet away, completely dressed in black. He wasn't moving, just standing there. I raised my rifle and yelled for him to get off the property. He didn't respond. Then he slowly started walking toward me. That's when I realized something horrifying. He wasn't alone. There were people standing in the rows around me. 6, maybe 7, all wearing dark clothing and masks. None of them spoke. They just stared. Then suddenly they started chanting, not English, some kind of strange rhythm. That's when I ran. I fired several shots into the field as I ran back toward the house. When I reached the edge of the field, I saw something on the ground. A cow's head, placed inside a circle of candles. I immediately called the police. When officers arrived, they searched the area and confirmed everything I saw. But whoever those people were, they disappeared before anyone could find them. My name is Tyler, and I grew up on a small farm in Arkansas with my parents and two sisters. Farm life is quiet most of the time, but sometimes the isolation attracts strange people. This happened in July of 2020. My parents had gone on vacation for a week, leaving the three of us to watch the farm. Late one night, our two dogs suddenly started barking like crazy outside. Not normal barking. Aggressive barking, like they were trying to scare someone away. I stepped outside to see what was happening. Both dogs were staring directly at the cornfield. Then I heard it. Whistling. Someone was whistling inside the crops. I yelled into the darkness, "Hey! Get off our land!" The whistling stopped. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then the whistling started again, closer this time. I ran inside and grabbed the shotgun. When I came back outside, I fired a warning shot into the air. That seemed to work. The whistling stopped, and everything went silent again. I went back inside thinking whoever it was had left. But about an hour later, I heard the sound again, this time outside my bedroom window. Whistling. Slow. Calm. I walked to the window and looked out. A man was standing in the yard, about 20 feet away, looking directly at my window. Still whistling, I grabbed the shotgun and fired into the ground near him. He immediately ran toward the road and disappeared into the darkness. He never came back again. But sometimes I still think about something strange. When he was standing in the yard, he was looking directly at my window, the exact window where I was standing, which means he already knew where I was.